Are you looking for an escape from manufactured truth wrapped in selfish agenda? Don't you just want to have a real and raw conversation, all masks and rules aside? That's what you're getting here at Titan Evolution Podcast. Get rid of all the nonsense information and discuss everything under the sun without filters. Listen to real stories of real people who will put your current perspectives to the test, guide you on living the life you truly want, and see everything free from judgment and pretenses. Time to get rid of those unhealthy environments and let your authentic self shine. Here are your hosts, Travis Johnson and Carol Carpenter.
Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm here today with my good friend, Debbra Sweet. Debbra, how are you today?
I'm wonderful, Travis. How are you today?
Oh, got some creaks and some cricks, and you start moving and your joints sound like popcorn. Is that normal?
I think some days it is, especially if you haven't had enough water.
Oh, that's
So,
true. That's definitely true. Uh,
mhm.
Debbra joins us today. She's a motivational speaker, an award-winning musician, an international New York Times best-selling author, leadership visionary, edutaining keynote, concert performer, STBI survivor, and a whole lot more. Uh, Debbra, I am just excited to have you on the show today. I know we met, it was like a year ago down in San
It
Diego at
was,
Julie Ducharme's She Talks, and I was the only
yeah.
guy that was talking, and all the rest of y'all were ladies. And let's be honest, that's the way I prefer it anyway.
I was going to say you were the smart man in the room. Like smart men know, go where women are, right? There you go.
I mean, it's the thing. I was talking to a friend of mine here about it, and he's like, it's a lady conference. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you're speaking? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I always knew you were a girl. And I was like, the smartest girl in the room, let's be honest. He's like, you're probably right. You're probably right.
100. I love it. So I do a lot of work with men and women. And when I'm with my women, I say we're dynamic women and the amazing rock star men who support us because you and I, we clicked right away. I couldn't wait to talk to you. I'm glad to be here. And yeah, you rocked it that day too.
Yeah, it's I just love being around people that love people. You know what I
There
mean?
you go.
Like we're there, we're together, we're doing whatever great stuff that is amazing that we're creating. And you're not around those people that like think if they're going to win, that means you have to lose. Like,
Oh
I
yeah.
don't believe that for a second. Yeah, if we're talking a sporting event, there's a quick, clear winner or loser, or you end up in a tie or some nonsense. But like in life, everyone can win all the time at the same time. No one has to lose in order for you to win. And you regaled us with an amazing performance of Cher through her different phases of stardom. It
A
was a
little bit.
lot of fun. So I'm gonna divulge something here for you that you need to know. I'm normally a hater of live music. I'm
Really?
usually it's usually like they didn't set the sound right. It's too much volume for the space that they're in, or it's off, or the performers are on something, and it's just like it's almost like the audience was like not considered when they're up there doing their thing. So a lot of times I get there and I'm like, you know what? That can't be. But your performance was amazing. It was engaging. It was fun. The sound was set for the venue. I thought it was just absolutely phenomenal. So I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
that about you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I bring a lot of intention to all that I do.
Hmm.
Um, and when I'm performing as her, those are like that was a different experience. So that was what we call as a special appearance show. And the room was great. I love the people in the room, and I was just honored to be there. And so, thank you.
Oh yeah, that stuff is a lot of fun. I also like to show up as different people for all the stuff that I do. Showing up as dad is a different kind of person, as showing up as a husband is a different kind of person. And we have all these different aspects of who we are. But somehow when we make a mistake in one of those things, we tend to take it on as it's the whole self that's the problem. And
Mm.
I wonder if have you ever felt that way? Like you make a mistake with one of the personas that we all have, and you're like, "Ah," and you just down and hard on yourself. You ever experience that?
Oh yeah, that was about well, it's not have I ever? It would be when's the last time? And I would say about 2 weeks ago. Did a goober thing that was yeah. Oh yeah, I had that head talk. had that head talk in the moment when I realized what happened, which was an so I'll just tell you what happened. So I have this property. I'm a bird girl. I love animals, but so if you ever hear me talk about our birds, I've always been connected to birds. I grew up in a different state in the Midwest, so I used to love going out in the woods and I would talk to the birds. But I wouldn't say that I am I think the term is ornithologist. That's a bird nerd. I'm not that nerdy
Bird
about
nerd.
birdies. A
Oh,
bird
that's
nerd.
a
I just made that up.
I'm giving you
Keep that
bonus
one.
points for that one. Bird nerd.
Yeah, a bird nerd, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right, yeah, I just made that up. So, anyways, why is this relevant to that? Have I ever had that moment? So, when I met my husband today, actually is our 30th wedding anniversary. Yes,
Today
we've been
is
married.
30?
Yeah.
It means you guys were married in like the late 1900s. That's crazy.
Wait a minute, that was mean.
No, I've been my son's 15, just
Oh,
got his
I got
learner's
it. Okay,
permit.
no, I took it to early 1900s. You said late 1900s.
Late
Okay, so
1900s,
I
yeah.
got my math right. There you go. Yes. We were married August 17th, 1993. So, excuse me, not August, October 17th. So we have this thing, we celebrate 2 anniversaries. We
Mhm.
celebrate what a term that I've coined called our metaversary. It's the anniversary of the day we met, which is
Mhm.
August 19th. That's the one we feel like is our real anniversary because we've literally been together since that night. So that's 32 years. And he wanted to get married formally on the 19th, August 19th, so he could remember it. Well, how we landed on October 17th was if we wanted to get married in the near future, the next August 19th was 7 years away. So we figured what's the next best number we could remember? And that was 17 because we're both born on the 17th of a month. And October seemed like it was going to be a nice weather month. So there you go, October 17th, 1993. So let's fast forward to your question. So when I met my husband, we started dating, he had birds. So that's how I learned to be a bird owner. So we've had house birds inside the house. We've had little parakeets, cockatiels, I've had parrots. We've housed and homed and rehabbed many animals. I call it the sweet zoo sometimes. But the house that we're living in right now came with an outdoor aviary. And so I counted yesterday, I have 36 birds again out there. So I have, they do what they're going to do. They have babies, they lay eggs. And so about 2 weeks ago when I was out taking care of the birds, I was looking at my trees in the backyard and I'm like, oh, I need to water this one could use some water. So I turned on the garden hose and took care of the birds and got done and I went in the house.
What'd you
That was
forget to
about
do?
that was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Noticed that night, wow, water pressure is a little bit lower, but in this house, if I'm in the kitchen cooking and somebody's doing a load of laundry or taking a shower, we get lower
Mhm.
water pressure. So got up the next day, I'm cooking, and my husband was I think he took a shower, was getting ready. He goes, have you noticed that our water pressure is a little bit lower? I said, yeah, I did notice that. And so because this is a unique property we've had in the years past, we had a water leak on the main line. So he's like, man, I wonder if we have a water leak. I should go check it out. So he went and he goes, about 2 minutes later, goes, get your shoes on. I found it. Yep, I forgot to turn off that water hose. And this was on a Saturday morning.
Uh-huh.
I had about that much water out my back.
Oh no.
And we have, like, when it rains out here, California doesn't handle rainwater well, so I know what our water table and how it usually goes. But let's just say that head talk really showed up because I was already on the back end of kind of a personal mental moment of defeat 3 days earlier. So it was there's a term called emotional whiplash, and that was one of them. I was rebounding back from something that, like, ever since August, this month and this year in particular, it's been a little bit challenging. This has been a challenging year in a good way, but not always easy. And you know that, Travis. Sometimes when we're growing through it, it's not always easy or comfortable to get through those growth moments, but it's how you come out of it. So the good news is we literally bailed out all that water. My husband, I hope that this isn't right, but he said it was about 6,000 gallons of water. So
Oh.
I'm thinking I'm going to have a hefty water bill come in. I don't have to water in the back for a while. And the good, because we literally, I was sweeping it down and out and away from the house because I couldn't let that water stand. And then I got to the point where I was scooping it with buckets and scooping it with cups, and we were throwing it back up to, I've got other things that could use watering. So we dispersed the water. And, one of the things this is my mindset. I always see the silver lining. I call myself an eternal optimist, even when we have dark times. Sometimes you're in a tough situation, and you know what? I will cry. I got angry that day. I got angry at myself. I was embarrassed. I felt ashamed. Those are real raw emotions. I cried a little bit because I was frustrated at myself.
Mhm.
But then I bucked up and just got it done, right? I pulled up my big girl pants, got it done, took care of it. And within the next day, where we were dispersing the water, I had planted some flower bulbs that have never grown, and all of a sudden they're growing. So there you go.
You just didn't realize how much water they needed in order to actually sprout,
Evidently.
evidently. And I mean,
Evidently.
you couldn't
So
have foreseen it because if someone told you, look, these things are going to need 6,000 gallons of water, you wouldn't have bought them,
I
right?
probably would not have bought them. Yes.
It,
That tree's looking pretty good. That
well,
tree is looking real good. It wasn't bad to begin with, but it's definitely well watered. And my husband's like, well, I hope that doesn't mean that it, his perspective was, I hope that it doesn't, that all that water didn't loosen the ground to make it topple. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to shift my belief around this because, we get what we think on. And so my belief is that that water penetrated so deep, it just forced roots down. There's something called tap roots. It caused that tap root to go down further and grow healthier anchor roots. So no, we're looking pretty good.
oh, I definitely can agree with that. It's amazing that what we focus on with our mind, those things tend to show up. If, you're focused on all the hate that's on
Yeah.
the news in America and you walk around with that, you're going to see it everywhere. Everywhere you'll
Yes.
see the hate. But if you're
Yep.
focused on the love that people have for their family, for their friends, for their romantic interests, and you walk around focused on that, you're going to see love absolutely everywhere. And neither person is right and neither person is wrong. You just see what it is that you focus on. And it's so wonderful that you're able to take that focus in that moment and reshift it to something that's actually going to be beneficial and not just self-deprecating and self-flagellation and all that stuff. You don't have like a chalice at home to nothing you're whipping yourself with. When you've had one of those bad days, it's easy to get pulled into some of this darkness, to some of these things. And when we actually can take a moment and reframe the situation and maybe focus on that silver lining, we've got a chance to get out of whatever the situation is without some kind of devastating impact to our world.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned it in the bio. There's this little phrase on the rock star of resilience. It's that speaks truth to what you just shared around one perspective. But I've had a life of learning how to be resilient. Because if I talk about my younger years, there's the Deborah between ages birth and 10, between 10 to 17, 17 to 24, 24 into my 40s, and then into my current decade. And so when I talk about things from my youth, or especially my teen years, the story is very different.
Mm.
What you're seeing right now is, number one, the me I've always felt that I was supposed to be. But I know, Travis, that I'm thinking it's 2023. I think it was in 2020 or 2021. I'm thinking it was 2020. so I'm not going to remember the exact year, but I remember the moment where I knew that I finally came out of my 40-year trauma tunnel.
Mm.
So my past has had a lot of hardships. The average, just kind of let's set the stage here. In 2020, I got certified. I have some really unique training certifications, and I don't even think you know about some of this, but in 2020, I said yes to an opportunity, and I actually am certified in, technically I'm a first responder, and my unique certification has given me the opportunity where I can be a first responder to first responders. Now, I did not do the training that I went through to go do that. The reason I said yes to the opportunity to get this unique certification, which is not a sexy name, it's called CISD, Critical Incident Situation Debriefer. Not sexy at all. It was organized. The training was put together by former military and law enforcement officers. So it's very practical and functional with all the acronyms. But the reason that I said yes to it is that through all my years of doing business, like my daytime stuff is helping businesses be really successful. And then my personal side has always been called to be this performance, to be a dancer, musician, performer. And so what I noticed for all my daytime business is that there were, I call them influences, internal and external. This is my definition. Internal and external influencers that impact life and business.
Mm-hmm.
And these are those moments where, you know, when we're working, we show up, we've got a goal, but then you get a call because your kid is sick. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but in that moment, it could cause a lot of stress to the mom or dad. Then now is to stop everything and go figure out, what am I going to do? Like we don't have to go down all the I call it the tentacles that come with it. That's an influencer. Like there's another one. Let's talk about it from a positive for a second. What if you're working and all of a sudden you play the lottery and you win the lottery? That's an influencer. Totally. And if if you're not used to having that kind of wealth come in your way, that's going to be an influencer, and it can overwhelm you. That can actually cause a downward spiral. And influencers, by the way, are not always negative. But my point of the certification and what I'm getting at is that what I've noticed for years that there are these influencers, internal and external. In our four walls of our house is an internal. You with your family, you with your siblings, you with your children, you with you. When you go to work, internal influences in your business or at your job could be you with your coworkers, you with your boss. Maybe you are the boss, you with your employees. I remember one of the influencers years ago, I had a girl that worked for my marketing firm, and this was a crappy thing. She stole from us. She sabotaged equipment. She stole clients, misrepresented, lied to my face. Like that was an internal influencing situation, right? Okay, so what am I getting at is that when we have these influencers, these are things that can take us off track. And in life and in business, those can create what's called a traumatic moment. Most prior to 2020, here's the statistic. This is why I'm setting this up for you. So you got an idea here, right? Before 2020, the average person, everyday guy, gal, everyday mom and dad, in our life, we might have maybe three traumatic incidences. For comparison, a 20-year law enforcement officer on the job will see 999 easily. From the time that I did this going through that training, there was a segment where we had some homework to do, and in less than 20 minutes, nonstop, I wrote over, I think it was like 396 incidences, traumatic incidents that I went through between the ages of 10 and 17. Mm-hmm. That's not all. So why is this relevant? Well, I took on the training because when I'm working with my clients, whether they want personal support or they're reaching goals personally or professionally, I had been seeing all these traumatic things pre-2020 getting in the way, and post-2020, that number is even more. So this thing about being the rock star of resilience, I have a lifetime of overcoming and not giving up. Doesn't mean it's always easy or always enjoyable, but to figure out how to change your heart and change your perspective when life is not so easy, not so clean, not so messy, or not so pretty. It can be, kind of messy. That takes desire, some training and some support, but it takes I call it conditioning and practice. It's a mental practice so that you have a situation, you forget to turn off the water hose overnight, that you can get through it and not have a total meltdown, that you can rebound back, stay strong, be resilient, and actually come out stronger than before. So there you go. I'll try not to get on my soapbox too much, but you're talking to me, and this is what I do. So
So it sounds like you've had quite the traumatic life. What is it about you? What are those core things within you that allowed you to get through that? The question we usually ask on this show is, what makes you a Titan?
ooh. Well, my inner warrior is incredible. Her name's Deb. When I reference Deb, that's what I'm talking about. She is unbelievable. She is truly she is my inner warrior. So I guess my answer to this question, it's a good question. I haven't really been asked this before. If I bring my simple brain into this, so my little Debbie, my little girl, I think there's two things. One is my passion for music. My young one, I've known since I was 5 years old. There was a day in kindergarten, I knew this deep within. I knew exactly the answer to the question, and this has been part of the trajectory of my life. So it's a desire. It's a deep, deep desire of my heart. And I remember in kindergarten, we had to draw out a picture that answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I knew in a moment. So I grew up I was born in a big city, and I grew up very rural, very, very rural. Not as rural as my great grandmother, but still very rural. So the point of relevance is that I had very limited access to television, radio. So I didn't get to play with friends the way that other kids got to. I could get up, go to school, come home, do homework, take care of my siblings, take care of the household, and then be with my parents at their business every day. But when I was allowed to watch TV, I got to watch PBS, and I was allowed to watch a couple of TV shows that were early in the evening. My mom is a product of the 50s, and she does like music and musicals. So I got to watch Donnie Marie, Sonny and Cher, Barbara Mandrell, the Grand Ole Opry, Lawrence Welk. And on PBS, there was this one, every now and then they'd have a ballroom dancing competition. And there's this woman named Juliet Prowse. Now, this is way back, this is a few decades ago, but Juliet was stunning. And she just had this grace and this elegance and this confidence. And she was smiling, and she just would move across the floor with such elegance. And I want to say resolve, that there was something that when I watched her in particular, it was very enthralling. And it was that watching her made it so that I wanted to be like her. I wanted to dance like that. And so in kindergarten, that was what I wanted. That was supposed to be what was on my paper. So what was interesting, so that's the desire of my heart, to dance, to be a dancer. Today we call it like dancing, like what we see on Dancing with the Stars, right? So that right there. So here's the reality of what happened. that leads to the Titan component. I went to do that assignment. I was so excited because there was this little conversation with all my classmates. What are you going to do? 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 And everybody's telling all their stuff, really excited. And finally, somebody came to me. Now, you need to know I'm an introvert. People don't believe that, but I'm an introvert. And so I couldn't wait for somebody to come up and say, Deb, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And that happened. And so I said, I'm going to be a dancer. And I did not get the love and support. What I got was, really? How are you going to do that? Oh, you can't do that. Like, it was nothing but slaps in the face. It came from my classmates. It came from my teachers. I went home later that day and I remember talking to my mom about it. I want to be a dancer. No, you're not. Like, any way you could say no. So here's I call her my simple girl, my simple brain. That was the day, Travis, that my life started to shift. Because here I showed up big and bold, sharing my heart, expressing my truth. And I can recall this being like, it was time to do this assignment. And my heart was hurt because what was in my inner voice was, how can they know what's right or not right for me? This is how I feel. I'm 5 years old. So I didn't know how to get the dance classes. I wasn't allowed to do the other stuff, right? But part of the resolve was the passion for the dance, the passion for the music, and that vision. That little thing locked in my brain. And through all my traumas and trials, the passion and desire for that vision, for me to do something with music, that is number one for years of what kept me alive. So I'll lay one part of this story here. What ended up happening, I did that assignment. Sadly, I listened to what other people said. Because see, there's another part of my upbringing, which was, you need to follow the rules because you're going to get in trouble if you don't follow the rules. Now, I do agree rules are important, but there's times where rules that are punitive, I do not agree with. Rules that cause poverty or cause us to feel oppressed, or rules that are going to lessen the essence of a human, I do not, I take a firm stand against that. I didn't understand that as a kid. That's the adult me. But here's what I did know that happened. I did that assignment and I got so much no, 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 no. And there was other stuff going on at home where unfortunately, I didn't have all the parental love and support that I wished I could have. I didn't really feel, I didn't really have the parents that had my back. That's kind of the bottom line. They provided for me, but taking that moment to support that child and know that, so that your child knows that you've got their back. There's a term called certainty in your humanness. That's not what was present. And so I didn't know that as a kid. What I did know is this: I did that homework assignment, and what I drew was a nurse, because that's what everybody said. So I didn't know how to have the trust in my decision, in my heart, and the conviction to hold on to it no matter what. Externally, I hid that deep in my heart and in my mind. And when I drew that nurse, I can remember I drew the hat and I drew the skirt. And it was when I drew the shoes, those nurses' shoes, those practical nurses' shoes, I remember my heart sank because I knew it was a lie. And what I also remember is when I drew that was the first time all I really wanted to do. When I drew that and turned that in, I felt myself sinking into the chair and just wanting to disappear. Yeah, and that right there, that's very pivotal in the arc of my story. So,
I mean, it sounds like that was the moment when you betrayed yourself based on what other people thought.
I started letting go. Absolutely. I just didn't know it. Maybe, I guess nobody's ever given me that input before. So it's possible. It's possible that is an accurate. I don't know if betrayal right there. I don't know if that one's quite the right word for betrayal, but like not having the inner resolve to just hold on to
Yeah.
it publicly and
Yeah.
draw it out. I guess that could be betrayal. See,
Well,
this is the
you knew what
interesting.
you knew what the answer was,
Yeah,
regardless of what anyone else said, and you specifically took action against yourself, against your
I guess that would be betrayal.
desire.
I've never really thought about it like that before. So the fast forward through that is, so the music, my passion and desire for music. So here's the good that came out of it. That, my little Debbie, we go dancing a lot. That is never, I never gave up on that. What I ended up doing is I channeled that desire, because through my schooling, now here's a good thing. Through the schooling of how I grew up, from the time of kindergarten all the way through at least 8th grade, every kid in school was required to participate in 2 school performances. So we had a vocal teacher, a choir director, chorus, choir, whatever, and then band. And so every kid in the whole school had to be part of a winter, like a Christmas show, and then a spring assembly, I think is what they called it. So there was always something like a play on the stage that you could try out for. There was a pit band, and then every kid, every grade had to sing, your class had to sing. And then the teacher would select soloists. So I've been doing performance stuff since I was little. And I won't go into this whole story here, but what I will tell you is that my appetite got whet and I wanted to be like my friends. I wanted to sing and I wanted to do band. And so when I started talking to my mom about, Mom, can I play an instrument? We were allowed to play an instrument in 4th grade. And what I heard was no.
That little cheesy recorder that's plastic and sounds terrible.
No, we did
No?
not have those. No, we had real instruments. But I went to my mom and I remember having this conversation. It was 3rd grade going into 4th. Mom, can I do band? No. I heard a lot of no's, like a lot of no's. My skin is really tough around no's because I heard so much of it.
Well,
So
what a lot of people don't understand is it's a no if you don't ask. So you're constantly getting no all day long. You just don't hear it. The only chance we have for a yes is if we ask.
this is true. Yeah, I can agree with that. There's a lady that I have met who is in her 80s, and she's still doing business stuff. She's very dynamic, and she has a statement of, like, this is polar opposite. She says, of what I just said, I heard a lot of no's. Her platform is show up and keep asking, show up and keep asking. So the Titan part of my inner warrior, I held on to that vision of music, even when my mother said, no, you cannot do band. However, this is what she said. She goes, however, if you still want to do it next year, when you go into 5th grade, I'll let you. So you better believe summer 4th grade was done. Bam, Mom. I mean, we are talking clockwork. I was committed to that vision.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important thing of that inner warrior. It's that, and that's the visionary influencer in you. What's your vision? When I work with people today, that is one of my first questions. What's your vision? What's your goal? Let's come up with a game plan. So that inner vision, holding on to it and being committed to it no matter what. And part of it, the resolve part, there's clearly the music was the driver because it's my deepest passion. And then the other part that showed up in my life and has been the catalyst is my faith. Not a doubt, because when in good times and in the low times, I do my best to give glory and honor and respect and gratitude for my Heavenly Father. And in times when life, it seems like there's just a shit show in front of me and everything is like There's the memes that we see sometimes when it seems like the forest is everything's crumbling in front of you. The less than poverty mind will think, oh my God, you go down that negative spiral. I look at it like, oh, the path is getting cleared. I can go around, or I'm going to go up or over. Doesn't make sure, sometimes it's not easy, but in those times where I don't know what to do and I allow myself to now feel all the emotions, and that's another thing where I actually can feel the emotions. I'm not overwhelmed or afraid of the relationship I have with my emotions. In those low points, prayer is all I got sometimes. That's it. So that's a
That's
long
all?
answer.
Your access to the most powerful being in the universe, and that's all you have left?
You know what I mean? It's not about all. It's my,
I
it
mean,
is
I'm
my,
intentionally challenging that statement on purpose.
I know
right?
you are. I know exactly.
Yeah.
No, I am a prayer warrior. So when I say all, it's usually my first line of defense. It's my last line of defense. I do my best to lead in prayer. Like I am that woman where it's happened over my life where I'll get pulled out of a deep sleep at 1:30 in the morning to pray for something that's so like a world event that I don't even know what it is. I just know the feeling. And I'm like, oh, this is global and this is really intense. Okay. I'll be up at 1 o'clock in the morning, pulled out of a deep sleep, and I'm up all day and I just pray. So yeah, we have a very well developed relationship.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it. It sounds like that stance and that presence is vital to your success and who you are.
100%. I would not be here without that because of all the stuff I've overcome. Yeah. And everything I do, why I do what I do today. So there was a point in my life when I was between 17 and 24. That was the darkest. To the outer world, if I told you some of the good stuff that was going on, a lot of people, like how I showed up, there was this external quick glance perception. Oh, she got it going on. She's going to college. She's got a career. She's got, good grades in school, good family. There's like, there's some external things in my life that are actually really cool. There's some really cool things. And in one part, I know it's because of a teacher, the most influential teacher in my life. He showed up for me when I was 13, 14. I was 14. I was a freshman. So I was eventually allowed to play music. So this is a trajectory. When my mom said, well, what do you want to play? I'm like, I don't know. I'll do what the neighbor does, because we had to pick an instrument. So I picked saxophone. I had a neighbor girl that's close to our family. She played it. So one thing my mom did really, I say right, and I have a lot of gratitude for, is that she made me take lessons, private lessons, in addition to school from day one. So I accelerated. So I've always been an advocate of coaching. I've been put in the coaching role since I was little, and I've been coached, and I always do my best to remain coachable. So fast forward, this is a positive directory. When I finally got into high school, it was the first time I was around other people. Remember, I told you I wasn't allowed to play a lot with friends, and I had a lot of kids in my life, but we weren't really allowed to play. If friends came over, my mother had a tendency to put my friends to work. And I'm talking yard work, household chores, cleaning. Like that's not what my friends should be here for. So I stopped inviting friends over because that was embarrassing. So the good is that in high school, I'm freshman, I'm starting to meet other kids. Schooling was always easy. And I remember I was leading band one day, and I was actually able to start playing with the high school band, even though I was in grade school. There was a program that allowed us to start a little early. This teacher was very, very innovative. He was supposed to be on tour with Steve Miller, but he turned them down to become a teacher. And that was a really cool call. And so I remember I was leaving the band room to go to class, and my teacher, who was physically taller than me and is kind of a big guy, kind of got up in my face and just out of nowhere, "What are you doing?" You know, I'm a teenager. You don't talk back, but I'm like, I don't know, going to class. He's like, "No, what are you doing?" "Going to class." "What are you doing?" "I'm going to class." And he said it one more time, and he's like, "No, what are you doing? You're screwing up." And then he proceeded to read me, not the riot act, but let's just say he had lots of words to say, and I don't remember everything that he said. But what I do remember is this. In that moment, he took a stand for me. He saw my potential, and he was the first adult that really had my back. And the gist of what he said is, "Deborah, you have talent and you're throwing it away. You're allowing yourself to get distracted by these people. Your grades are getting impacted." I mean, I remember certain details, but I don't remember the nuances. What I do recall is this, that was the first time any human ever did that for me, like really did that for me. And it was so impactful, Travis, that night, I remember his words just resonated all day. And that night, I really thought about what he said, and I realized this. What I wanted to do professionally was to be a music performance major. I wanted to tour the world and perform my music. Now, at this point, I was told I was not good enough to sing. The irony is I'd already been singing. I was given all those solos, but that teacher from grade school to high school told me, "You're not good enough." Turns out I was. Unfortunately, I listened to her too, but not completely. But this teacher stood up for me. So I learned to emote instrumentally. I learned to emote without my words. And that's where the pickup of this passion in my life, music. When I say music saved my life, it's because when I was playing my horn and I would practice, there was a time I practiced for 13 hours a day. I played. And I could at least express, and I could connect to an audience without words. And so why I bring this up is right here, is that there's some amazing good. But there was this other part, and talk about that inner resolve, and you talk about the one above. Behind all the good was a lot of trauma and a lot of hardship. And what we didn't know, there was something that happened when I was 10. And it was a day that at 10 years old, I became aware that I was aware. And it was a fight between my mom and dad. Now, they had fought before, but this one was horrific. And it were the words that were spoken that mortified me. I've done a lot of trauma work on this day. As a 10-year-old, not understanding what I was just observing and the words that I heard, that was harsh. What I do know is this. My inner warrior kicked in that day. And that was the day that I started to put on my suit of armor. I put on my gauntlets to start firing like Wonder Woman. So I learned how to protect emotionally in hardships. And by the time I was 17, again, you don't know it when you're going through it. You're just living through it. I was fighting. My inner warrior was just fighting to survive. And again, to the outer world, things looked really good. But inside, I was dying. Literally, physically, emotionally. I would go to the church. Now, this is not good. I'm not advocating this, because I would skip school to go to the church to pray, because that was the only place where I felt heard. And I was on my journey. I was on I was searching for resolution. But there was a point where life was so dark and people were so busy. I did reach out. I reached out to adults because of my parents' business. I knew doctors, I knew people in different areas, and I would go to them. And I'm 17. I'm like, something's not right with me. I just knew it. Something wasn't right. And unfortunately, they didn't want to see me, like really see me. They didn't want to hear. I kept speaking up. Even when I was that incident when I was about the dancing, I spoke up, but I wasn't heard. And so I reached out to doctors asking for help. And they just all said this: you're fine. Nothing's wrong with you. You're a teenager. Well, I knew I wasn't fine because I wasn't fine. Life was dark. And it was getting darker. And although I had good on the outside, it was the inside stuff. And then there was a day I finally took action. So there are 6 times in my life that I failed significantly. And I'm really glad I did, because he intervened. And so I tell you this because these are tears of gratitude right now, okay? Through all that, it was that quest. I was on that quest when I was 10 years old. What I started was a quest to be whole, healthy, and loved. That was the quest on that initial day. And what happened on that initial day, I now know because of the certification that I just went through, is that at 10 years old, I started living life with post-traumatic stress disorder. Not just PTS, but post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, back then, we didn't know that that was a thing. It wasn't talked about. But prior to 10 years old, I was exposed to so many traumas already that the distinction, for those who don't know, the distinction between post-traumatic stress and disorder is that when we have a stressor or a trauma situation, the body is designed to go into fight or flight. You might have freeze in the way too. That's more freeze, fight, or flight. And that is a natural reaction. We're either going to fight, like our blood rushes up and we want to fight our way out, or the blood literally will rush down into our legs so we have the strength to run away. And that is life or death. Fight or flight is the body's innate protective mechanism in a mortal death situation. When people are exposed to trauma repetitively, though, that can get triggered so often. And it's not always you're in mortal danger. There are these things that there's a term called emotional hijacking. There's just these ways. If we don't have, as a child, if we do not have love and support, and we're not taught how to have a healthy relationship with our emotions and with ourselves and with others, that exposes a child to many conditions that they're not prepared to handle. And that's what I was exposed to. And I personally feel that today, in our current year, we have more awareness of the impact and importance of mental health, and that it's a-okay to talk. We should talk. But growing up back then, that wasn't the way. You shove that shit down. You cannot tell the world that you have a problem. Well, fast forward. I'm at a point now where, because I was not allowed to succeed, and I know that there was no doubt in my mind, divine intervention behind the actions that I took to try to take myself out. Through my healing and through my, what is my life about? Pondering all of that, What is my crazy life about? Why? Why am I drawn to all this? Why do I have these complications? Why me? I've come to understand that I'm here today. I've been heavily groomed, and it's part of my job to help people learn how to be resilient, shorten their track, their timeline, so that they don't have to be stuck in all the trauma. Because my personal mission now is to help heal the world one heart at a time. But I have so much gratitude that I was not allowed to succeed in that moment. So when I meet people, my perspective is very different. You can't fake. There's just certain things you cannot fake. And my antenna, my radar for connecting with people is very different. I'm highly sensitive. I perceive things differently, but I've been groomed by trial by fire so much that now, today, when I have an incident, if I have I call it a toboggan moment, an emotional toboggan moment, I can rebound a lot faster. And that is, in my opinion, that is an indicator of your inner strength and resilience. And it's my heart to be able to help more people understand that they can do it too. I've always said this. When people come into my life, whether they meet me through my music, they meet me through speaking, they meet me through business, I've been told, Deborah, you're inspiring. Travis, that was never a word that I ever used about myself. It took me a long time to understand why do people keep even saying this? I'm inspiring. They'd say, how do you do it? How do I do what? I was fighting to live. That was it. I was fighting to live and figure out, what's this crazy vision? How do I make it happen? Because nobody seems to be showing up. I trailblazed through a lot here. But when I kept hearing that word inspiring so much, I finally allowed myself to accept it and take ownership of it. And I do get it now. I understand that when I tell my stories and people hear bits and pieces about me, that they know I'm real. And that when I say I really care about your success, that's not puffery, that's not vain words. That's really, I really care, because I don't want people to go through the harshness of some of the stuff that I've gone through when there's somebody who's willing to stand for you. Now, here's what I won't do. I don't let myself get pulled down into the drama anymore. I stand on the firm ground. I won't go into what I call the mucky muck. It's kind of like a lifeguard, right? If somebody's drowning, the lifeguard doesn't necessarily just dive in the water. They're going to throw you a life preserve first. Only in an extreme condition would they dive in the water to come rescue you, because their life could be at peril too. But that's a different subject. So yeah, my faith is really strong, and I've been groomed by trial by fire. And so my inner warrior, I know that all of this has taken me to the point of where I'm ready to step into my forever future, which has required me now to be at this point of this ability to have such resolve and be willing to stand up and take a stand for other people, so that we can become unified in vision to serve a greater purpose. So there you go.
Oh, that's it?
I don't know. You tell me.
I've been experiencing a few different things as a podcaster recently. I love talking. It's one of my favorite things to do. I talk all the time. Anyone that knows me, they're like, oh, geez, you're always talking, right? And I've been making a concerted effort to listen, to sit in the pause, to let people be. And it's hard for me because I wanted to jump in there a million times. I want to tell you how amazing all your words are when you talk about, I don't know, puffery, metaversity, bird nerd, emotional whiplash, taproots, drama trauma. Like, I just want to comment on all those things. But I think if I
The
would
language
have,
of
if I would have commented in real time on those, we would have lost the essence of the message. And I think what the message is that we become who we are meant to be through the trials and tribulations of our lives. Is some of this stuff awful and not pleasant? It is.
it is.
Some of the stuff amazing and powerful? It is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's what we do with those things, those times, those experiences that creates who we are. And when we embrace those things, even the hard stuff, even the stuff that's not our fault, that we're not to blame, and we experience and really understand those things as we go through them, that we create amazing people like yourself, Deborah. And the world needs you as you are now, and it'll need you as you become in the future. And I think that's a really powerful way to look at what's happened.
Thank you. Well, you and I talked off camera before we started. We were talking about our books because I'm a book nerd too. I love to read, and I'm a talker too, by the way. As you can tell, and oh yeah, did I say that I'm a vocalist? So as I do vocalize with my music, so I have capacity. I know this about me. I've done trainings where I have to train for people. Sometimes they're 5 or 6 hours. It's not an issue when I'm doing shows, my music shows, and I'm singing at high energy, especially if I'm performing a share. Those are sometimes 3-hour shows where I'm singing in costume. So endurance is what I'm saying. I've got this stamina and endurance. So you and I, we could talk for hours, and we know that, right? But why I'm bringing this up is that before we came on, we were talking a little bit about books. You were sharing about some books that you're reading, and I shared one that I've recently read the last couple of years. It's called The Big Leap. It is, out of all the books I've ever read, and by the way, I worked in a library for a while just so I could be around books. The Big Leap is the second most impactful book of my life. And so, without going into all the details, the reason I bring this up is because of what you just said. You mentioned who you are becoming. So, I've known for a long time that leadership has been placed upon my shoulders. It was put on my shoulders when I was 4 years old. I didn't ask for it. So, just a little side note, I have never once intentionally sought out a role in leadership just so I could say I'm a leader. What would happen, because I've been in, I'm highly responsible. I do my best to be efficient and good at what I do. Now, there's a lot of stuff I am so not good at. I just learned early on, don't do what you're not good at and lean into what you are good at and get better at it. Okay. So this leadership thing is interesting because for a while, when I left working for my parents, I didn't know the skills in business that I had because nobody bothered to tell me. Eventually, I was introduced into the art of selling. Actually this is my definition. I love having intentional conversations that convert. I love having an honest conversation to help somebody solve a problem. But I was trained very wonderfully that helped me fall in love with the process of having a sales conversation. So most of my career jobs, I just applied for sales jobs because I didn't think I was qualified for anything else. And by the way, they were commission jobs. So salary, I didn't worry about. This is the entrepreneur risk taker in me. Evidently, I have a very high tolerance for this kind of stuff. But the reason it's relevant is right here is that I have a litany of places that I've worked for, because one of two things would often happen is I'd get a job and I want to do my role well. So I'm going to take the time to learn the details, and I'm going to ask a lot of questions because I want to be my best prepared. And usually within the first week or two, of asking my questions, one of two things would happen. One is my bosses, their eyes would glaze and they'd roll their eyes and, have this heavy sigh, and then I'd get fired. Or two, my boss's eyes would light up and go, oh, we're putting her right in management. I'd get fired because unknowingly at the time, I identified a problem within their business. And I wasn't trying to solve the problem. I just asked a question so I could go make my sales, but my boss didn't like that. So they figured, you're new. I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to fire you. Those that put me in leadership, I know that they're like, oh my God, we have a problem. She gets it. She can fix it. We're going to put her in management. So Travis, I have never once to date intentionally sought out a role of leadership. And so I share this with you because in one of the books, I think it was the second book I got published in, I talk about this, that I had a lot of anger and a lot of attitude and sometimes resentment that I was always having leadership stuff put on my shoulders when I didn't ask for it. Hindsight's always 20/20. And so I share this with you because I have struggled with the mental willingness to fully put on what I call the robe of leadership. And my Heavenly Father and I have had lots of talks about this because He's really pushed me at times into places, in situations that I did not want to be, but I knew that I needed to be because I was getting groomed in leadership. And how does He groom you? He puts you in the deep end. Throw you in the deep end and you're going to learn how to swim. So I finally accepted mentally, I accepted my robe of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Now I bring this to this point and how it ties to the big leap. So there's this call of leadership. And I have written I've got books over here. I had a whole series called The Power of Leadership. I had a radio show called The Power of Leadership. So I've learned a lot along the way, and it's a hot topic. But why I'm bringing this up is that what I've been getting groomed, no doubt this year for me, 2023 is grooming me on a whole new level, because there's a call of leadership and then there's your calling. So in the big leap is going to talk about stepping into your zone of genius. So the premise of the big leap, and let me tie this together because it's pretty powerful. In the book, The Big Leap, the author talks about 4 quadrants, and he's got lots of certification in counseling. So there's a term he uses in his book called the zone of incompetence. Now, words are really important in our brain. The way our brain works, I'm very particular about my words. So I don't like that word. I don't feel we are incompetent. I feel that I've renamed it the weedy zone. There's a place where we're thick in the weeds. Okay.
Oh, I thought you said Wheaties zone. Like we got to get our fiber
Wheaties.
before we go.
Wheaties? Well, maybe, but no, weedy, W-E-E-E, W-E-E-E, W-E-E-D-Y, and not weedy zone. Somebody might want to do the weedy zone. Okay.
We're
the zone where
derailing. This train is off the rails.
You got it, baby. All right. So this is we have these things in life where we just know, man, I go do this and the stress just goes. It's not that I can't do it, but it takes me too long. You shouldn't be there, right? Outsource that first. Then then the author talks about the zone of competence. I'm competent at a lot of stuff. And a lot of people get stuck here. Traditional schooling about life and business gets people stuck in their zone of competence. How many people, Travis, do you know that say, I hate my job?
I try not to know those people anymore, but I know what you mean.
But you know what I mean, right? Me too. So those people are stuck in a zone of competence. I'm going to my job because I have to. No, you don't have to. Okay, so you're competent, so you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of beliefs that sit in here that I'm not going to get into. Then the author talks about your zone of excellence. And this is a great place to get to. Your zone of excellence, this has to do with giftings and skills. And so for me, My zone of excellence, and this has taken me time. I've been working on this the last 3 years to become aware of the nuances. And so my zone of excellence is my visionary strategy. I used to think that was my total gifting. I'm
Mm.
very visionary and I am very strategic. So that thing about I can see the big picture really big and fast and then understand how to pull it all together. Music is like that. When you orchestrate, you score, you pull things out of thin air. Well, visionary strategic planning, I do that all day long in my businesses and I'm really good at it. And I have fun with it. And we can make a great career. And a lot of people do make a great career living in their zone of excellence, should you allow yourself to. Now, then this author, he is trying to inspire us to step into our zone of genius. And that took me some time to figure out what's my zone of genius. So I have a client. So this book is so good that for my private clients, I have them read this book so we can talk about it. I have a client that we are working on her branding, her marketing, all that kind of her business stuff. And it really hit me. Her zone of genius is fun. Really? I think about that. In business, like how can that be a zone of genius? Fun. But it's true for her. My zone of genius is inspirational leadership.
Mm.
Okay. That inspiring. I inspire. There's no doubt about it. When people see me, they hear me, they talk to me, it's been happening for years. That's my zone of genius. But there's this other thing now. This is why I'm sharing, because I'd like to encourage your listeners to contemplate this. If you all get this book, first of all, I have nothing to do with the author. The author doesn't even know I exist. It's just a good book, right? Good book, great conversation. And again, if I can pass on a good resource that helps you, great. Then I've done my job here. But here's what I've been growing through. And Travis, I think this is what I've been going through, which leads into some of what we're speaking of today. There's this component of your calling. What's your call? What's your calling? And for me, this is what 2023 has been about. See, there's my zone of genius, but the call is above that. And when we allow ourselves to say yes to the call, that which we are called to do. And by the way, this is my deep opinion, has a lot to do with leadership and my very different opinion or my different perspective about leadership. I believe that all people are born to lead. And there's a reason I believe that. And that goes contrarian to what a lot of people teach. But if you allow yourself to show up and fulfill your call, that's how we can change this world. And that takes vulnerability. That takes willingness. And everything you and I've talked about so far, you referenced this a little while ago when I shared part of my story, that when you were expressing to me the benefit of learning how to listen, the flip side of that is, as a human and as a leader, allowing myself to show up and express with vulnerability. That's the other part of it. It's two sides of the same coin. And if you feel in your heart, I always talk about it. What did you answer when you were asked as a little kid? What did you know you wanted to do? And are you doing it? That's your call. So Travis, I'm curious, what did you want to do when you were a little boy?
I'm gonna tell you right now, I've got no idea. It's
Okay,
changed
and
so
I've heard
many
that before.
times. There was a
Do you remember
point.
the first one?
There was a point in my life where I wanted to be, a police officer, and then a firefighter, and then an astronaut, and then I wanted to be in every military service, and I wanted to do so many different things. And it would probably take a good bit of discussion and exploration to get down to the thing that I wanted to do first. I don't know if I can answer that right now.
So far, everything that you've shared has to do with rescue, adventure, and service.
I'm writing this down. I need these notes for me. All y'all listening can wait a second. Rescue,
Adventure,
adventure, and
and service.
service.
Possibly Astronaut. Yep, there could be a component of protection, but rescue, adventure, and service.
I definitely like adventure. I definitely like service. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And what I have found when I'm working with my clients is that even though our life trajectory might not have mapped out exactly the way we might have hoped, what I do with my clients when we talk about aligning. So there's this thing that I termed a coin. I've coined a term, that's the right way. I've coined a term called leadership brand fusion. I am the originator of leadership brand fusion. And what I do is I love helping those who are leading a business, leading a family, in this case, leading a business, transcend the logo so they can step into their true essence, their true strength, and lead their business and experience joy. That requires us to align a lot of pieces that typically are compartmentalized, and that requires some of that vulnerability. But I find that there's always a tie-in. It's the red thread that runs between us in all of our parts, that even if where you're at today might not look like what you had envisioned when you were a child, if we map out your journey, there is a common thread. And I am living proof that you're never too old. You're never too old, and it does not matter what you've overcome. It does not matter what you are currently going through. If you heed the call of your heart and you're willing to stand forth and allow yourself to get some support, you can overcome anything, and you can be the vision of that person you've always wanted to be. The body is strong, the mind is stronger.
I tell you what, that is a great place to end it, Deborah. If people listening or watching this want to get a hold of you, what is the one place you would like them to connect with you?
You know what? Just my main website would be fine. It's debrasweet.com, and my name is spelled a little unusual. It's Debbra. So Deborah with 2 B's. And then sweet like sugar sweet. So debrasweet.com. And they can just drop me an email, and please do reference that you heard us here. And happy to reach out and talk a little bit.
I really appreciate that, Deborah. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Travis, thank you.
I like every time I get a chance to talk to you, that's like one of the bright spots of my day. So appreciate
Likewise.
you being on camera and catching up over the last couple of weeks, and looking forward to this coming out and people getting to experience that vulnerability that you shared with us today, that God faith-centered life that you've been living, and going back to your 4-year-old self and knowing that you have passion for the dance. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Deborah.
Thanks, Travis.
That's all for this episode of Titan Evolution Podcast. We hope this no-holds-barred conversation opened your eyes on what it takes to live a genuinely happy life according to your own terms. Now that you've treated yourself to such a refreshing discussion, you cannot listen to nonsense content anymore. Be sure not to miss an episode by subscribing to the show at TitanEvolutionPodcast.com. Don't forget to share the word so more people can be enlightened, informed, and entertained. Thank you for listening.